3, 2, 1.
Hello, everybody. It's Chris Schmidt from Rocket Lasso, and this is Rocket Lasso Live, where for the next 2 hours, we're going to be answering Cinema 4D questions live. I get the questions right from the chat, and we try and figure out as we go. So I'm going to... we already said some hellos in the chat, so I see no reason not to immediately jump to sharing the screen and starting to click some links. Now, Trey did a typed out question. It is a typed out question about if C4D can morph between two objects that have different shapes and different poly numbers. And the simple answer to that is no. They need to have the exact same points and point count. There are potentially ways around it where you can force one object to take on the shape of another object via some sort of deformer. So inside of Cinema, let's see, this could be a terrible example because I'm not totally sure how this will look. But if I were to make let's make an icosahedron sphere, so it's a bunch of triangles, I'll add some extra triangles, and I want to try and turn them into a cube. Typically I do the opposite, but let's put I'm going to hide the cube and put which deformer? I don't use this very often. I'm blanking out, but when I see it, I'll know it. It is the Shrinkwrap deformer. That's what I'm thinking of. So if I put the Shrinkwrap deformer on the sphere and then feed it the cube, you can see it's attempting to take on the shape of the cube. So if we had a good distribution of points or polys, or if we subdivide this enough times, you can see this will start to take on the shape of a cube. Not perfectly, but you could now say that this sphere here, I'll make a copy. This sphere and this cube now have the same point count, and you could now morph between those two because those are the same. So that's kind of a really clunky way of doing it. Typically, I would make sure to make a low poly model of this whichever shape it is, and then try and morph between them. So base one model off the other without changing point count or cutting or anything like that. So yeah, just a little quickie right there. I'm going to click some links. We got a link from JC here to Instagram. Let's see, it actually popped up in the right window, which is excellent. This is from Beyond FX. Let's see, it's Beyond FX. They might be a reposter, I'm not sure, or they could be their company or where they work. But it's from Matt Radford. Let's see what we got. Is there audio? It's hard to tell. I'm assuming you mean this explosion animation. Make sure you call out the effect you're asking about. Yeah, presumably that. I mean, when it comes to this kind of like almost Final Fantasy-sque animations, it usually turns into a series of different rigs that you transition between. And it's fun, but a lot of it just turns into like you're completely making it up as you go. So let's try and make up something and just maybe talk about some different techniques. And I think a lot of it would be you would do some transitions in like in After Effects, because Cinema is going to be able to give you some transitions, but maybe not all. Now, one that we saw right away was this helix type of shape, so we'll work from that one. I don't think we're going to end up with something very similar, so I don't mind starting out a little bit more the same. I'm going to double the initial count, and we'll create a spherify to immediately make this a little bit more spherically shaped. So that's pushing up. Obviously, if I turn on the axis tool, I can pull this down, and we'll start encapsulating the spherical shape a little bit more. If I move it all the way down as far as I think I can and begin stretching the height, then it should slowly kind of stretch this overall space a little bit better. It's never going to get quite to the top and the bottom, but we can double the spin count again. And you see I've got okay distribution between how this spline is spread out. So a lot of this is going to be just layering up different parts of animation. So let's see, what's the way I might want to do this? I think we'll just animate it we'll animate a whole series of things. So let's create a end side. I just like end sides. If we're going to create something round to sweep around it, I like end sides because I can control exactly how many sides there are. Let's click on the NURBS menu and grab ourselves the sweep. T for scale, shrink this down until about the final size that we want. inside the sweep, I'm going to turn off caps because those are unnecessary geometry for what I'm going to do, because under details, I'm going to add a few extra points here and pinch in the top and pinch in the bottom. And actually, we could probably, do it overall, and we'll just lengthen this a little bit. And these can even curve up more. Excellent. So you see that will actually go down to a kind of spiral point. Excellent. And then I'm not gonna overthink it. So we're just gonna deal with keyframes. I would love to, if I was doing this kind of animation, I would definitely use Signal, the plugin that I helped make at Grayscale Gorilla, but we don't need that. So we're gonna just animate the end growth here. Now the end growth, well, I guess by animating the end growth, you're gonna see that it's actually chopping off the tip here. And if I didn't want it to do that, let's go ahead and put in an extra layer. Why not? This is all just for educational purposes anyway, so why do it the easy way? I'm going to make a Mo spline, and the Mo spline, I'm going to set that to spline mode. And in spline mode, I can feed it a source spline here, and I can see that there's a spline on a spline. And I think what's cool about this is, yeah, we can now grab the end and the start. You can see I can actually spiral the end and start. I'm going to change our display mode to regular line, and let's hide the original. So now you can just see that we have this new spline. So we have a start and an end. And and now this spline has a width, but yeah, I guess we control it via that width now. So in the same way we were controlling the scale via this, I'm going to reset this back to default, and now we'll control it via the Mo spline. So we can pull this down, get a midpoint and pull that down. Defaults are a little bit different there. Let's see if this is cutting off. Oh, and we'll set a width. Now, actually, it is cutting off there. So it's interesting. Okay, sorry, we're tinkering. I'm going to undo a few times. Go back to, I'm undoing until I have the spline back again, because what I'm going to do, I think, is say that the display mode, it's line, but the sweep is taking on the rail scale. I'm going to turn that off. Dang it. If I take off the rail scale, oh, this is still growing. Let's grow that all the way. Yeah, okay, that's grown all the way. And now we have a Mo spline, and the Mo spline, we're ignoring the thickness that we were getting from the Mo spline. So I don't care about that at all. And now by controlling this end scale, now you can see that we actually get the pinch from the start to the end. And that looks way better swirling around. It just kind of appears out of nowhere. So that's kind of fun. So let's do a keyframe there. We'll probably be scooting these things all over the place. So I'm just going to keyframe and go pretty quick, 30 frames, so 1 second's worth. And we'll spiral that up. So we should be able to see that. And then let's also animate the thickness. So I'm going to grab the end side, and let's say at right about the halfway point, we can say that that is up to its full scale, but at the beginning we'll have a thickness of 0. So that will also animate on. So this should really kind of feel like it's coming out of nowhere. So that's fun. And then let's add in some random motion. Why not? So we've got our final result here. I think I can just throw this into I'm gonna try and use no plugins. So we'll throw this into a animation vibrate tag, turn on use rotation, and let's see. Well, first of all, let's just make sure. Yeah, that does seem to be rotating a little bit. It's gonna be going very fast no matter what. So I'm gonna go down to 0.5. Let's give it just to start out. Let's do 90, 90, 90. I don't have any very specific ideas. So that's gonna spiral in. And even with this random motion, we could transition out of that. So we get that nice little bit of randomness, different seed. I don't like the way that current one looks. That was a little bit better. So with that random motion, we can maybe start at frame 20, and I'm going to keyframe the amplitude, how strong it is. And then we'll jump a few frames after that had settled, and we'll animate this down to 0, 0, 0, and that should do a nice soft transition into not moving. So it won't snap. This should randomly move and then settle in. So, you know, it's not amazing. And I mean, I almost kind of feel like I would want still a little motion there. Let's jump in here, and I'll jump into 15, 15, 15. That's something. It's not overboard, but it's something. Still feels a little bit fast. I'm going to slow it down. Just a little bit of a drift. Yeah, so I'll actually, I'm willing to spend as much time on this as it seems. The you see how there's a clunkiness to it where it's like it's motion, but it's not very smoothed out. So what I would actually do here would be to make a null, and then let's rename the null vibrate, and I'm going to move the vibration tag onto that. And then on the sweep, I'm going to add a rigging tag constraint. So this constraint tag is now going to be a spring. Spring, what object does it want to look at? It wants to look at the vibrate. It only cares about the rotation. And now it should follow the rotation of that, but we have the ability to add a lot of drag, and the stiffness is not too high. But if I lower this, it should, well, let me show. Yeah, if we have a low stiffness here, you can see how it keeps on moving because it's actually overshooting that initial motion. So let's go and give ourselves a couple extra frames here. So now it's going to wiggle, and there's still that base wiggle, but it very slowly will go down. Now, if we add a little bit of drag, I think that will slow down a lot more quickly. And actually, just to show it clearly, let's make sure that we keyframe this all the way down to 0, 0, 0. So we'll let that settle. You see it, no matter how crazy that was moving, it's now moving a lot smoother there. So I'd be fine speeding this back up again. And then it's going to settle its way down. Excellent. The order of operations should automatically be good there. Actually, the vibrate tag, yeah, it calculates at 0, and this one also calculates at 0, but this one's coming after the vibrate tag. So the order of operations does matter. So that's growing in and doing its thing, and it'll eventually slow down. In addition to that, I'm going to, why don't we scale up our sphere as well? So that's at full scale, but I can shrink. Oh, that's a strength. I can shrink the radius of this. So we'll have that grow as well. So we'll have a radius of 0 at 0. And we'll go up to at frame 20, we'll jump back to the original 200. Let's see what that does. I don't like that too much because it's just kind of shooting that first part down. So I think I want the entire thing to start later. I don't know if it'll work at all, but let's try 10 frames later. And now it's so small that we're missing those initial frames. So maybe the scaling isn't too helpful, or maybe we don't want it to be all the way down at 0. Now, if I select only our Spherify, I only keyframed one parameter, so I can directly click on that parameter. And you can see I have the exact value here. So I can type in a new number, and now I've updated that number directly. So yeah, that's kind of weird. I guess, oh, that's probably just a spring catching up. But now it's already existing at the beginning. It's just getting a little bit bigger. And we can manually add a little bit of springiness there. I think it'd be kind of nice. So the easiest way would be, let's right click on the radius and go into animation, show F curve. And here's the curve that is creating. So if I wanted to do a little bit of overshoot, then we can, like that's, well, let's say that's our fine, this is where we want to settle. So I'll actually, I'll select just that keyframe, hold down shift, so it's only moving off to the side. And I'm not moving that many frames, but now I can create another keyframe here and go bigger and make another keyframe. I'm holding down control to create the extra keyframe, and now I can go a little bit smaller. So now we can overshoot, undershoot, and then settle in. And it's just a little something to give it some extra motion. We'll see what that does. We're still getting, we're getting that spring pop, I think, in the beginning. Actually, that's super bugging me. What's it? What is it? What is that? It's like this radius doesn't know what it's doing until, what is even causing that? I feel like it was the Spherify. Let me see if it happens if I turn off the Spherify. Yeah, it is the Spherify doing that. Why would that do that? It's strange. What I'm going to do is rewind to 0 and then also record the same frame at the beginning. And that's, well, I got to turn it on. It's still doing it. What is causing that? The most spline is a child. I mean, it could be that this wants to move around at the same way that does. I'm going to move this in as a child just so it's got the same motion. Okay, that stopped it. So I think it had something to do with the way the most spline was spinning around, but referencing an object that wasn't spinning, and it wasn't quite sure what to do with it. So that was seemingly the issue there. I can make it a child that won't have any effect on the hierarchy. I'm going to hit reset PSR. So it's zeroed out in the most spline, just so it is 0. And now it's going to do the movement. Oh, I guess that we got to be careful. It's moving up in the most spline, because it had to be minus that amount. Wow, hitting a little speed bumps here, but this is just it's just hierarchy stuff. I'm just gonna eyeball this and scoot it down until we're at the center. So I'll create. I'm just gonna make a cube there so I can eyeball this and move it. So that's about center. Whee. All right, so let's see what we got. Yeah, we get that little overshoot. Everything is spiraling. I mean, we could have done a lot of this stuff with cloners, but right now we're just on keyframes. Why not? Yeah, that's fine. Let's move on. So now I'm thinking, let's get some displacement going. So create a displacement. I'm going to make it the third object in the hierarchy of the sweep, and that will automatically make it work. Otherwise, we could put it to a null and have that be the effect. But I'm fine with this way. So let's check out our poly count. NB is actually pretty good based on the number of end sides I had put on there. We don't actually need that many splines traveling around. Segments rather, traveling along the spine. We can change that number. Is this matching? I think this is matching whatever the helix has. So in the helix, currently there's these uniform subdivisions, so we can start decreasing those. And there we go. Now it's a little bit more square. It's not going to be perfectly square everywhere, but where we see it the most, it'll be square. So now we can go into our shading and create a noise. And I think this is going to be rotating around with it, so I think that it should be pretty stable. That's what I'm curious about. I'm going to make it larger so I can... It's not animated right now. Yeah, it seems to be stable. It's moving with it, which is good. We don't want it passing through a cloud of noise. I could show that by setting this to world noise. Actually, because we're moving along with it, we won't see it. But let's just leave it at that. I'm glad that it's stable. So now we've got these bits of noise traveling around. Currently, the displacer is displacing in and out. So depending on what we're going for, that could be good. Like we make something like really chaotic like this. Actually, I like building that kind of thing where it's like, okay, now it's just a big mess. And we had something very controlled in the beginning, but now we get this nice big like chaos there. Well, I do have to say, it does feel like there's a little bit of motion here as it's kind of wobbling. Thought there wasn't, but unless that's the spherify passing it through, when does that seem to happen? Let me see. Is it? No, it's after that animation's all done, so it doesn't seem to be as stable. I'm going to try changing our texture to 2D. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's not going to work. Or unless it's 2D, and we have to spiral around. So we have X, Y, Z. So if we made, or is it maybe X? Let's try making that bigger, smaller. Very small. Yeah, okay, so now it's a two-dimensional noise wrapping around the spline. Yeah, that can be odd. Yeah, and it's two-dimensional, so it's always the same shape. Is it the same shape all the way through? It's hard to tell. 0.1. Yeah, I don't trust that. Default scale back to, I mean, I don't want to get too lost in it, because I was going to say if we set this to world, then we can very clearly see it all wiggling around. We're passing through a noise, and that could be neat by itself. Let's just keep moving forward. I'm going to create a subdivision surface and drop this inside of it. So we're going to get all that chaos there on the initial part. I don't think I want all the subdivisions. We'll just do one, just get a little bit smoother. And yeah, now we end up with this crazy shape, and there's kind of, because we're passing through the noise, there's a little bit more chaos to it. Currently it's pushing in and out. So if we wanted to have more control over this, we can just say it just pushes out. So the intensity just pushes out, everything inflates. But now we'd want to start minimizing a lot of these colors. So we need more dark areas. So as I make this more black, it's going to thin them out. But the thinness can only ever be as thick or as thin as the tube. So that's sort of a limiting factor there. Now, what we could do is make the radius very small always. So even when this grows large, I'm going to say, no, it's actually 1. This is as thick as it can get. And now we're just going to end up with these places of thickness where we tell them to. So that's kind of neat looking right away. And depending on how far we drag this, we are now introducing a little bit of thickness in various places. Now, yeah, so yeah, that's neat. If we made, if we were to increase the brightness, we will eliminate any completely thin area. So we have kind of complete control over how thick that gets. And then we've got, of course, all different noise types. I don't have anything super specific I'm going for here. Just trying to have some fun with it. So I'm going to just tinker around. I mean, we got our old standbys like Naki. I'm going to lower our octaves because if there's too many, it's going to pop in and out a little too often. Neat. Now, let me think. What do we want to do? Oh, so that was that. And I was thinking about, this was probably a bad idea, but we could make a copy of this displacer and put it after the subdivision surface, or in the same hierarchy, but I'm going to put it after. So the second one, and now this is going to be viewing the geometry after the subdivision surface has been applied to it. So if we were to grab a noise that's really sharp, something like a pezzo or a, Poxo. Poxo is usually pretty good for this type of thing. If we clamp in the colors, we end up with these little spots, and then we're going to end up with these spikes coming out of our shape. But the way these are going to layer up, that's going to be really chaotic. Yeah. Even if we have these pretty mild. I mean, you can get these, if we're going a little bit quicker, that could be okay. And then, well, yeah, I don't know. But we're just playing. But something I was tinkering with this the other day. Even if we make a smoothing, I kind of like playing with smoothing as well. Like the smoothing comes after everything, so no stiffness and smoothing everything out. So I kind of like taking that and then really pushing the displacements really far. So yeah, look how crazy that gets. Like already, I'm not even sure what's going on with that geometry, but like the geometry is super crazy, but then the smoothing is trying to rein it back in. I don't think that was a great idea, but maybe if we take this displacement and start inflating it more, so these can get more inflated, but then the smoothing is trying to take control over it. Once again, I don't like that one. And I'm going to smooth it earlier so it can calculate quicker. Although, yeah, that is completely nullifying a lot. Let's see how far. That's interesting. Why is it doing that? That's strange. Whoa. Why is it doing that? I mean, this is what it's actually doing. And then the smoothing is trying to smooth that out. But it seemed to have a distinct pushing inward vibe. Yeah, that's strange. I'm not entirely certain what's happening there. Yeah, look at all of them, actually. All of these have a lot more weight pushing inward. Yeah, the bulges look like they push inward, not outward. That might have something to do with the direction of the geometry, but I feel like it's not that. I don't know. That's not something, I mean, this is supposed to be one tiny part of a larger thing, and we're spending a lot of time on the very specific one. But it's more like how lost you can get when you're just playing with one little thing here. I mean, I think it'd even be nice if this kept spiraling around. We want that to keep on twirling. So what can we twirl this after the fact? It seems like we can. Maybe we can't. It's hard to tell if that, maybe it is. It's a little twitchy, but let's see. If I were to keyframe this, I'm going to keyframe at the beginning. Let's go all the way to the end and just spin it a bunch of times. 720 times 2. So it's going to spin around 4 times. Yeah, it definitely is spinning. But what's interesting is it's spinning, but it's also spinning through the noise. So the noise has an interesting effect on it overall in a very particular way. There's still something with the way I did the displacement and noise combination that is slightly strange. I do like those kind of being left behind, but it is interesting. Yeah, I mean, I don't like building things where I've lost control over exactly what's happening there, because I don't know, if we were to move forward, I don't have complete control over what was happening. And that's what where the noise is currently at would leave us. So even the way it's appearing in the beginning, I guess its displacement is giving it a lot of thickness. So we'd have to keyframe the displacement up. I'll do that. But a lot of it would turn into like the way the final motion is going to appear. Keyframe the height up to 40. Zero at the beginning. I messed that up. 0 at the beginning, 40 at the end. So now there's the displacement will also animate in, just so there's nothing at the beginning. These all spiral in. Should be nothing at the beginning. Yeah. I don't know, a lot of weird stuff. Let's just go crazy. Let's make a cloner. I'm gonna feed it into a cloner. Let's see what happens if we make several of them. Now, right now they'd all be in the same spot, but let's see if the cloner can handle it at all. Seems to be. So could each clone have some rotation on top of it? Yeah, it can. So do something like that, and let's see. Yeah, so now that we've got this base animation, we can do things like throw into a cloner, and each copy can start getting its own random thing going for it. So we'll do that via a random effector. So with the random effector, let's not affect the position, turn that off, but we will affect the scale and we will affect the rotation. So 45, 45, 45, just a little, they're tending to be the same direction, but not always. It seems to be animating them, currently set to random. I'm going to say random indexed. I wouldn't think they'd rotate. Yeah, or maybe they're rotating in a uniform way. I'm going to say 555. I just want to see. Oh, that's kind of neat. Yeah, the way they're layering. Maybe going soft touch on this rotation. Yeah, soft touch is really, it's giving something a little bit trippy there with the way they layer up and kind of flow through. And then I'm going to do a uniform scale. Let's even do an absolute scale. And now they can randomly scale downward, and I'll just make some of them a little bit smaller. So that's just, you know what? Like, I kind of like them all looping on top of each other. They're doing very similar things as they pass through. It gives them this trippy quality. The Spherify not animating right at the beginning is definitely throwing me off. I didn't like this one, but not even that. Oh yeah, Spherify is not 0 at the beginning. I'm gonna set that keyframe to 0, so now it should be nothing. Yeah, this scales up really big. Maybe the Spherify shouldn't be animated at all, and then we can control that via the cloner. No, I do like that. And then, I mean, well, I'm not gonna push this too much further because I want to hit more questions. And I haven't saved this, which is a little dangerous. I don't even know what to call this. Helix power up. You already know what I'm gonna do, and that's gonna be create a volume builder, a volume mesher, and let's see if it can handle this. I don't know that it can, but we'll put this into the builder, and it needs more resolution. Seems to need a surprisingly high resolution Depends, probably depends on what frame we're on. That's, something seems strange about this. Even this, like, we could have built this entire thing. We could have built this entire thing directly in Volume Builder with just cloning splines and letting the splines do their thing, and then multiplying a spline on the noise as it passes through. So, man, a lot of ways of combining this. But if we were to put this into the mesher, yeah, it's how is it interpreting this cloner? I almost feel like it's interpreting it like a spline, which is very strange. I don't think we need to subdivide, so I'm gonna get rid of that, and then the cloner is going to be put into a connect object. And there we go. Now it's treating it more like geometry. Don't weld. Unnecessary to weld. Then the volume builder probably doesn't need as much resolution. There we go. Now they're blobbing together better. So what, I'm not sure what it was viewing it as, but it was not viewing the cloner as geometry. It was acting like it was treating it like a spline, but it wasn't giving spline settings. So, you know, that is what it is. Now you can do the volume builder based smoothing, but it's really slow to calculate. It's really nice for what it does, but it's slow to calculate, especially in the viewport. So I like creating a smoothing and then putting that as a child after, and it's going to smooth everything after the fact. So now these all get blobbed in together and smoothed. Now I don't think we're going to be able to see this in the viewport very well. Yeah, I do like those moments where they sort of come together. And the smoothing can shrink everything to the point where it's almost completely eliminated. If we want to prevent that, I will make a displacer afterward and feed in a color white, and it's going to inflate everything. We don't want to go too far, so I can just say 1. So then you can see those, like, no matter how skinny it gets, it has to still be at least a thickness of 1. So it sort of comes in after the fact. And now we get these lines all traveling around. So now there's just a fun, weird blob. And see, this is where, I mean, it's wonderful, but in the newer versions of cinema, especially R20 and 21, if you were to show me this blobby shape and say, how would you make that? It'd be like, I don't know. Is that just noise on a surface of a sphere? But it's like, no, this is actually a twirled helix in a cloner with a bunch of displacements on it. So, you know, the stuff, the way things can layer now. And it's all super parametric, so that's impressive. And of course, after we're doing all that displacement, now we could even put another displacer after that. And these can be blobbing up there, changing the scale. You know, now we can get these smaller lumps on that. And now that definitely looks a little bit more alien. I mean, we weren't really going for an alien blob. We were more going for a weird energy thing. But yeah, now there's even more definition in there. And that should just be, once again, parametric and layered on top. All this stuff, layering, being fun. So yeah, it's pretty fun and gross. But it's all, when it comes to those effects, it's all about taking something and animating it on in an interesting way and then animating it back off again in an interesting way. And a lot of those ways that you might want to have them animate on or off might be, you'd have to do it in post in After Effects or something. But yeah, we'll just stop this one here because otherwise we just go on forever. Thanks for the question though. Level bevel. Boop. What do you got here? Did you call out the crumple at 22 seconds? Uh-oh, crumple. Crumpling. Oh, 2-minute papers. I love this YouTube channel. I'm subscribed. See, look, subscribed. So, oh, there's audio. I'll turn that off. So, when is this one? This is from a couple years ago. So these are usually about, like algorithms that people are working on. But you were specifically asking about right around here. Yeah. So that crumpling. Oh, look at that. It's beautiful. And I think there's even tearing. Oh, look at those crumples. Oh, that's so nice. It feels like a foil. So yeah, they're trying to write very specific. Yeah, look at these crumples. Oh, so good. Now, this is like a state-of-the-art paper that someone was working on, and it hasn't been implemented into cinema. So the ability to get that kind of a crumple is not inherent into cinema at all. So I wonder I almost wonder if there's anything we can do along those lines, but I am intrigued. So let's spend a little, well, let's spend some time. I'm not going to say how much because we never know. If it starts going well or if I'm really intrigued, I tend to spend more time. So I'm going to start with we'll do even a very similar scene. That's like a mathematical paper and we're just in cinema. So I don't feel like we're going to be playing too much in the way of copycat. So we're going to, yeah, almost an identical setup. We'll make this all dynamic in a moment, but we'll start there. Keyframe. And over the course of 50 frames, that'll scrunch down like that. That's the plan. Let's get some nice colors. I always make everything too saturated, so let's keep it a little more mute. Crumple that. Green crusher, yellow floor. I don't like the yellow floor. All right, and let's get some contact points using an SSAO in the viewport. And I don't think it's a bad idea to get a little bit of shadow just to pop out a little bit of definition. Display shadows, please. Excellent. Thank you, cinema. Shadows. And I think we can even, yeah, we can do a partial shadow there. That should give us a little more definition. So everything needs to be dynamic. Obviously, the floor, just fully dynamic. That's a rigid body. This cube, I'm going to, let's make a rigid body. But just for accuracy, I'm going to say that this should be a box shape. I've been doing that almost all the time now. If it's a box, I set it to box. If it's an ellipsoid, I set it to ellipsoid. When you see part 2 of the cloth tutorial I just released, and especially part 3, how fast ellipsoids calculate, it's completely convinced me to set those kind of things as often as possible. And the star of the show, the cylinder, that is going to be soft body. Not a surprise there, I'm sure, to anyone. Now, a couple different things. First of all, it's going to be soft body. Let's see what let's get control of our soft body first. So we just got the cylinder hit play. Okay, that's pretty fun, but not what we're going for. Oh yeah, we've got the refresh issue. It's an R21 thing where if I rewind all the way, it actually doesn't trigger a refresh. We have to go forward 1 frame and then back again, and that will refresh it fully. Super annoying, but I don't know what to do about it. Okay, so what we need to do is add a lot of settings here. Now, something I've learned is stiffness it's great for what it does, but stiffness is constantly trying to turn every point back to its original position. So whenever you're doing anything that's relative, you can't use any of it. Zero stiffness, you just can't. So what we actually want here is a lot of structural. We want a lot of damping would drain the energy out. So I feel like we do want a lot of damping. This can get dangerous, but we'll try. We'll see what happens. Damping, damping, damping. 3 dampings, lots of power. Now, if we want this not to bend at all, then we need a lot of flexion and a lot of shear. Let's just start out that way. So this should be minimally bending. Now, you see it still is. You can only push these numbers so far until they start exploding. So if I make that 10 times as strong, I mean, that's fine there. All the cloth stuff that I just did has shown that there are some limitations on that, but we're doing a very different application. So I'm just curious how stiff we can make this without resorting to actual stiffness here. So if we hit play, yeah, I mean, no matter what, just the sheer weight of this is crushing down. Now, I wonder if the weight is relative on this object. So I'm going to change the world density to a custom density. I'm going to set that down to 0.001, which is as small as we can go without being 0. I want to see if that has any effect. There's a good chance it doesn't. Yeah, because it's relative to its own self, so that doesn't do anything. But it's worth giving a check. So back to custom, or back to world density. So that's as far as this one is going to allow us to go. There's things we can do to counter it, which would be like fakes. So in this case, what I would do is make gravity very mild. So Control D, Dynamics, General, Gravity. We still want some gravity, but if I set that to 100, then now there's very little. And you see, oh, it's very stable. And now when this shape comes in, that is what's going to crush it. So that's forcing it down. Okay. Neat. Now the cube's getting in our visual way. So render tags, display tag, turn it on, set that to lines. And now we'll see through the box as this crushes down. Now some of the issues we're seeing, well, there's a couple of things I'd love to talk about. I'm gonna have this crush down and then move back up again. So that will crush down. It'll stay in its crushed position for a moment, and then it will move away. In fact, it'll move right back. Yeah, we'll just go up. I'll go up to there. Whoopsie. What is happening? This is keyframed. It's a, oh, I didn't turn that onto it as a dynamic object. Whoops, that's bad. Well, it's now not a dynamic object. So now it's keyframe down. And then I want this time to also be reflected there. So if I hold down Alt and I drag my timeline, that means nothing refreshes. Very important setting. Very important shortcut. And then it should go back up again. There you go. Now you can see it crushes and uncrushes. So that's going to now go down. A very absolute way. It's not the weight of the cube anymore, but it's going to crush and then it's going to move back up. And you're going to see it's going to slightly try and return back to its original shape. Therein lies the challenge. And here's where, like, I'm going to add some stiffness in here, maybe even just as an example. But if we put a lot of stiffness in here, let's see what happens. It's trying to maintain its original shape, and it's actually doing a nice job of crushing. The top and bottom get crushed. But you see, when that moves away, it's going to attempt to return back to its original shape. Now that I think about it, actually, because of what we're trying to do, stiffness might actually be the way to go. I feel a little silly after just railing against it. But what we're trying to do is do a plastic deformation. And what a plastic, and that's where this elastic limit is. What the elastic limit is it's all about like things like plastic and metal. Most objects have a state in which they can bend, and it kind of doesn't affect the molecular structure. But if they bend past a certain point, then now it breaks those bonds, and it can never go back to the position. It's like if you take a, do I have a paper clip handy? I do. If you, let me see how well I can show this. So here we've got a paper clip, and the paper clip, like I can do like this wiggle here, and you can feel like it'll go back completely back to its original position. And I think that it wouldn't even wear out. Like you're not bending it far enough for that to wear out. But then you get the point where you pull it far enough, and you can, when you're playing with a paper clip, you can very distinctly feel when suddenly it's deforming. And when you're doing that, you're kind of damaging the shape, and it's going to a new set state, and it's also weaker. So that is what happens with this elastic limit. So what we're going to say is once it's pushed beyond a certain point, that elastic limit will break, and thus that becomes the new permanent shape. So without changing anything else, if this crushes down and goes back up again, we're going to see it return to its original shape. Like a few more frames would probably be a little helpful. That returns pretty much to its original shape again. But if we start lowering this elastic limit, I'm not sure how far we'll have to go. I don't think this will be enough, but we'll find out. What should happen, well, let's wait till we see it so we can explain it. Yeah, this is still deforming back to its original shape. But I think once we get to around 10, I think we will maybe see something here. But we might have to drop it down to 1. Yeah, okay, see how this did not return to its original shape? And that is because certain parts of it went beyond the threshold. And I said, just break that connection. Don't try and return those back to its original position because, because it's now, past the point of no return. So you get this deformation. So with that type of thing in mind, I wonder if we can fake this effect a little bit. Let's save this because we got a couple settings. Crumple zone. All right, so here's the thought. We don't have that many points and polygons, so this might be tough, but and I'm gonna make a duplicate and turn one off because we might need to go back to it and make this editable. And we need a vertex map. Selection, set vertex map. Oh, not convert to vertex map. Let's go to point mode and then go selection. And then you can say set vertex weight. Set it all to 100%. Actually, it doesn't matter what we set it to because inside of the vertex map in R20 and 21, we can turn on use fields. And with fields here, we can apply a noise. I'm going to do that via a random. I think we do random, although I don't know if that will lock them in. We might pass through it. We'll find out. I'm going to set it to a noise. In fact, let's find it out as quick as possible. If I were to make this noise and crank up the contrast, and actually this is a little bit weird because we need to, in order to crank up the contrast, you can't do it inside the noise. It's completely fine. You can't. Actually, you can inside the remapping. So if I go to remapping and turn on curve, we can now clamp with this type of thing. So what I'm curious about is, you see how I'm trying to really clamp these in. So we kind of got a North America, South America thing going here. And when I hit play, is it going to be passing through that, or is it stuck to it? Now it seems to be stuck to it, which is, I don't know if I was expecting it or not, but that's what I wanted it to do. So with that in mind, I'm going to set this back to none, and let's find the correct noise type. And that's probably going to be a Voronoi. We don't have a lot of resolution here, so this might be, maybe it's going to be a little tough. We might want, I did want the clamping. I just wanted to see it a little more clearly. Let's see how well we can show this. Yeah, it's going to be tough because this will allow us to do like certain regions that are strong and certain regions that are weak. Just for clarity, I'm going to apply these materials on a plane just because I want to see it quickly and not be guessing checking on that super low resolution. So I got a new material. It's applied onto the object, and then the luminance channel of this material creating a noise. Make the noise about twice as big. And now, is it just, maybe it's just Voronoi 3 that I wanted. And let's even, yeah, we'll even use this very visual method to see what we want. So actually, yeah, what we want is something like that. So yeah, let's go 10, 15 on a Voronoi pattern. You're going to see we kind of end up with something like that. That is the goal. So, but this could be inverted the way this curve works. So we said 5 and 15. And we're on Voronoi 3. So let's make sure we're on that one. Oh, yeah, now that kind of inverts it. So that makes sense to me, I think. Yeah, cool. So pull that up a little bit, and we'll pull this over a lot. And you see that we don't have, this plane is giving us tons of resolution. This object, now you can see the equivalent coming through, but it's not going to give us the exact same resolution because we don't have that much resolution. So we're going to have to eyeball that a little bit more. So, something like that is maybe okay. Now, this is pretty extreme. Right now, it's 0 to 100%. So those have 0 strength. So let's see how this applies. In the cylinder, we've got the dynamics tag. Inside dynamics, we have stiffness. And there's even the elastic limit. So we can set the elastic limit differently in different places. So let's try that. I'm going to try setting the elastic limit. And if I jump this up to 100, then it should be enough where it's like, oh, I never break. But this vertex map is going to say that in all of those red places, that it's actually 0% of 100. So those will break very easily. So let's see what happens. Well, I'm not seeing, well, this is, I guess, where the elastic limit is. A little disappointed because I mean, it's a little bit of a different kink there, but I'm going to try copying the map up to the stiffness as well. Let's see if that does anything for us. I mean, it's still, it's visually behaving exactly the same, which is, well, I guess I got to keep some things in mind because we're also using a lot of structural and damping and all that. So I'm actually going to reset all these to default. If you right click on the little up and down arrow, you'll set it to the default value. So it should just be, at this point, the stiffness that's dealing with it. Well, that was different, at least. Interesting. One of the problems that we're getting here is that you can in every simulation that we've run here, one of the problems that you're seeing is the top and bottom get crushed because those are what's in contact, and the rest of it isn't really affected in a very even way. I'm actually curious if we put all of these down to 0. I just want to see if the stiffness behaves exactly the same. Obviously not. Well, I guess once it moves back up again, is it going to try and return back to its state? It's getting a little chunky there, but okay. Well, okay. We are seeing it. Interesting. I'm going to make this run quicker by turning off self-collisions because we don't really care about that. So that will crush down and then move back up again. These points can freely pass through themselves, but let's see what we are seeing here. What you can see is that all the points that were red in our vertex map are wiggling all over the place. Those have now broken. They now have no stiffness. But everything else looks like it's trying to return back to its 100% original position. So this is putting us back to the we cannot trust stiffness because it's just trying to put everything back in its original relative position. So with that in mind, goodbye stiffness and hello structural. And everything goes back to its default. So that is doing nothing. Now stiffness does nothing. This entire shape conservation doing nothing. So if we drain the energy out from the shear and the flexion and the damping and hit play, let's just go back to this. Now, I mean, we get the low gravity. This is going to crush on the top and bottom. And it doesn't try and return back to its original shape too much, but you see how they are trying to go back to their original position. Kind of don't want gravity to be a variable at all, even if it floats. Let's make this a little bit more of a universal test. So this can float, and nothing should be breaking here. And everything, I think, would eventually get back to its original state. Now, all of our damping is draining energy out. Let's get rid of all the damping. I don't want the energy drained out. I want to snap back into its position as fast as the energy will. Woohoo! Damping. Oh, damping. Damping is important. And if without damping or with too much damping, you get very interesting and strange results. I'm trying to wrap my head around exactly what we're seeing here. And I gotta tell you, it's tricky. Now, something that's nice is that there definitely was more deformation in more places. So that's actually good. Let's try dropping the damping to 555 and see if it's similar. If there's still kind of that. Yeah, okay. Yeah, that definitely does happen. So, good to know. Now, we're going to start cranking up our structural. So now it's less likely to stretch. Our shear, less likely to tilt over and shear. Flexion, less likely to bend. So with that in mind, let's see. Yeah, now it's going to, now there's more structure. And you see, like even right now, currently our vertex map is doing nothing, but us building in the proper rules here, do you see how it does feel more like it's crumpling? Like this middle part is definitely crushing while the other ones are bending just by doing the proper rules there. What's DST? What is DST? Everybody keeps mentioning DST. What does that stand for? Don't Starve Together, the video game? Crunch. Okay, so yeah, so that's crunching down. Now we've got an elastic limit here. I'm not sure. Let's try dropping it down to 100% and see what that does. So that's going to begin crunching, and then once it uncrushes, was that enough to snap it anywhere? Actually, that's this elastic limit here for structural is not terribly important. Daylight savings time. Oh, daylight savings time. Okay, yeah, I always just like wake up by my alarm and it's like, oh, it seems to be lighter than usual, but I almost never notice. That's why everybody's saying it started early. No, we're on central time changes with it. So yeah, apologies if that was throwing some people off. It stands for the Delaware Statutory Trust. That makes total sense now. Anyway, this is it's crushing it all down, but this elastic limit for the structural doesn't matter that much to me. What we do care about is this flexion limit. Like once it bends a certain amount, that can suddenly break. So if this were to go down, probably not terribly far. Well, I'm going to drop it down to 10, so it's a lot. But as soon as it bends a certain amount, then it's now broken there. And now when this goes back up, you should see that it should be doing a reasonable job of yeah, you see it pretty much stayed completely in its broken state. So that is exactly what we want to have happen. So back to its original 180, and that is where we're going to feed the vertex map. So we've now super weakened particular areas, and those particular areas should hopefully be the places where this is going to want to break. Actually, we didn't weaken it. Those are just the places where it's allowed to break. So let's keep that in mind. You see, it does seem to be broken in certain areas. But what we actually want to do is have that be, I guess maybe we don't even want it in, we don't even want it in the elastic limit. That is just like, if it bends a certain amount, then hey, it's broken. So I'm going to drop it down to 9, let's say 45. That's a lot, but 9 needs too much. So I'm going to drag the vertex map actually into the regular flexion. So what we've done is said, like, hey, I don't want to bend. It's really powerfully trying to say don't bend. But now we said, hey, certain areas, they're allowed to bend. And if that certain area bends enough, then suddenly it'll trigger this threshold of 45 and thus stay in that broken state. So let's see. I mean, it definitely bent in a different way. And now the straight up elastic limit should be saying that those broke. It's a little hard to visualize because it doesn't give you direct feedback. So let's try changing. I'm going to drop the elastic limit down to 20. There's probably a pretty, oh, nice pinching there. Oh, look at that. Okay, that's our best one yet. That's some pretty good crumpling there. Yeah, like these broke really well. So I think the theory here of the elastic limit, like that was a good idea. If we drop that, we can probably, 10 might be too low, but if it bends even 10 degrees, it's now permanently crushed. But it's just a lot more likely to bend in a particular place because the flexion is going to say where it can bend. So that's pretty good. I'm actually quite pleased with that. And now the more quickly it's allowed to break, the less it's going to like return to a previous deformation state. So that's pretty good. Now let's do some A/B testing. Actually, this is another thing that I talk about in the tutorial. In the recent tutorial I just released, talks a lot about cloth, is the idea of making multiple tests and A/B testing. So I don't need to make 2 crushers because we just can make that one bigger. So the idea right now is if I were to just make a duplicate of the cylinder and scoot it over here, let's see if we get an identical simulation. And if not identical, at least visually similar. And then what can happen is we can, yeah, definitely not identical. I mean, not identical at all. And it could be that maybe the vertex map changed when I moved it over. I don't know. Same behaviors, different result. Let's see. Well, those are the same pattern applied. So definitely some randomness. Now, having said all that, I would not expect identical there. They're pretty different, but things as small as like this collision noise, that could be the variable that is introducing randomness, and even though I always have it, that could be introducing randomness into everything. I'd be shocked if these were identical, but the I feel like they are closer. You can see how this bend right here is very similar to that bend right there. Not identical, but very similar. But the reason for doing this kind of thing, and I think we can put a little bit of gravity back in the scene. The reason for doing this is we can now tweak the settings on one and compare them back and forth, but don't expect identical. These are still having the same settings, but you can see they're very different. So what settings? Oh, well, one thing I was going to do is just, we can randomize this crumple zone. Actually, yeah, it's kind of neat. If we have it selected, we should be able to see that the places where it's likely to break are going to be along these lines, like right where the red line is, hopefully where it's more inclined to break. Now, actually, I think that what I'm saying is true there, and especially in an area like this, but I'm just suddenly remembering that in flexion, oh, dang it, I can't have more than one selected. With flexion, it needs a single line isn't enough. It actually needs a point and 2 points adjacent to it in order to make that jump. So this might actually not be enough resolution to really be seeing it break in particular areas. So on this one, we will push it further. So if I start scooting this over, you're going to see that the red is going to become a lot more red. And now there starts being more gaps. And now there's more broken areas than there are not broken areas. But I want to see if we can more clearly see that this flexion is more inclined to break in those areas. Yeah, look, see this immediately crumpled there because it had enough fall off for that to be where, and look right there, that there was also enough here. So it also broke there. So you need enough thickness for that to jump the line. Otherwise, it's going to have a little bit of influence, but not that much. So with that in mind. We need more resolution if we want to have it be more detailed. So I'm just going to do a full-on subdivide. So that does mean there's 4 times as many points. Always keep that in mind. A subdivide is not times 2, it's times 4. But now I can pull this up a little bit more, and you can see the lines got a lot thinner. But we'll still have areas where it's like 1, 2, 3 points are weak enough to do that change. I'm going to double the height so they get stretched. Perhaps shrink the overall scale. Whoa. Oh. 3, 3, 3. Go figure. Yeah, I got to find the right scale here. Maybe 150. And this needs to be bigger. Yeah, it's picky. There's definitely a push and pull. No, that's just bugging me now. Let's get the... Yeah, by changing the resolution here, it completely changes the way we have to interact with this spline here. This now needs more room to have enough area to do it. Yeah, push and pull on that. Now, so let's see. Crunch. This already, the flexion was so weak, it started crumpling almost right away because the flexion is dropping it down to 0. We should keep that in mind as well. We don't actually need it to go down to 0. Now, when it does start bending at a, well, first of all, like some of these will only have 2, and that means it's not enough. It's this one right here, that is not thick enough for it to have had any effect on the springs. But certain other areas, they were very bent. Like right here, this is all red. There's nothing holding it. So immediately you see it begins crushing itself. I will say that as it crushes itself, it seems to pass through. Watch in here. I feel like they start turning white. Yeah, look how some of them start turning yellow. So it looks like this is passing through the noise. It's passing through the noise, but relative to its own position seems to be what this is set up as. So currently the space is based on the field. I'm going to say the space is, nope, you have to give it some space apparently. Okay, well, here's the next thought. Let's put it freeze in there. This should freeze that. I'm going to say freeze. And even if we turn this off now, it is now stuck there. So those become more of a constant crumple. So those, yeah, you see they're not turning yellow now. So those are able to break and stay broken. And now, yeah, I think anywhere where there's enough of these springs overlapping, it becomes very weak. Everything else can bend and does. But yeah, we added a lot. I mean, there's also, there's so many details. Keep in mind that the more polygons that you have, the more strength you need to counteract all those polygons. Because once again, I talked about this in the tutorial, but when you have a couple polygons and they are, let me click on the screen here. When you have 2 polygons here and they're ready to bend, they'll bend like that. It's like, okay, there is, 20% strength trying to keep this from bending. But then if you have another polygon and another polygon, another polygon, another polygon, each of them has 20% trying to stay in this original position, you're now got like 100, or there's 10 times as many places for it to bend. So that same strength would need to be so much stronger. So, but they're, essentially these calculations have their limits. We can't push them infinitely. So, if I were to make this 10 times as strong, which is probably too much, but we're going to make that 10 times as strong, you always get the chance it'll explode, which I fully expect it will, but let's give it a go. All the rest of these are now so much, they don't want to bend, but the springs can only compensate so much and everything kind of has this cascading effect. Yeah, even with that strength, you see the entire thing just really seems to be collapsing. There's just so much weight. It does want to break on those more, kind of like its belly flopped out there, but it took a lot before it wasn't crushing itself. So your poly count is very specific there as well. So I feel like right here I think we stumbled across a pretty decent layout, a pretty decent poly count. But I mean, once again, you see the push and pull of where the buckles and breaks may or may not happen. Oh yeah, and this one's morphing as it bends. I wonder how much of an effect that has. Let's do the freeze on that as well. Freeze. I don't think we need to change that layer because it's not, this one's frozen, so it's not going to be changed by what's below it. So these, I don't think will change anymore. Nope. Yeah, and that, yeah, already you can feel it. It feels like it is bending on those crumple zones a little bit better when it's not morphing underneath it. Yeah, so I think this is as far as we're going to get in cinema now. Yeah, that is as far as we're going to get. I'll save this as another version. By the way, if anyone is new to the stream, all these scene files I am saving will be available to the people on Patreon. So that's a cool little bonus. I'm going to make a duplicate of the cylinder that's subdivided. And it's not dynamic anymore. And what I would like to do is make it so that I'll make it green. I would like this lower poly mesh is going to deform the higher poly mesh. And that might give us some neat looking results. So I saved it, so I'll get rid of that one. So we just have, this is our base. So Cinema actually take care of all the settings I was about to set. So we will just create a mesh deformer, put it inside the high poly mesh, drag in to object, the cylinder base. Under advanced, I'm going to say the external is surface and initialize. So now it's mapped one to the other, and you see it disappeared, and that's because I automatically put a render tag and a display tag on it, so it won't render. So now this isn't doing anything except for deforming based on our base. And this will be our high poly version. So because it's a higher poly version, I think our edges and everything will look a lot sharper. So I think our bends should look much crisper because we've fed it a higher poly version. So let's entirely hide the low poly, and now we're just seeing the high poly. And now, yeah, I do think that we're getting some sharper edges there. The correct Fong tag will probably go a long way here. I'm not sure how high, 75 or 45 didn't seem like enough. Maybe a little tough to get the Fong angle on that one. I want to try and push that further. Like how smooth can we get that to look? I'm going to subdivide this again. It should run really quick. Subdivide. So now there's tons of polygons. We need to reinitialize. So I'm going to say initialize, and it's going to pop back in. You see there it is. It is, I said subdivide, which should have been a soft subdivide. Why does that? Oh, I think it might just be the shadow. No, it's not. Well, I don't trust that. We'll just do it again. I'm going to make the cylinder. I remember I kept that original cylinder just in case we needed it. Well, let's use it. Times 4. Oh, we want the height segments. Times 4 on the height segments. Times 4 on the width rotation segments. And that should be nice and super smooth. And we don't even need to make it editable, but we do want to make it green. We'll do it one more time. Mesh deformer. Cylinder. Reference the base. Surface, initialize, and now we can see this one deform. Oh dear, I can hit pause because I just accidentally forgot to delete the dynamics tag off of it, so that's bad. I clicked and held the mouse down on the pause button because as soon as it does a refresh, it'll be like, oh, you're still holding down. But you don't want to click more than once, because if you click more than once, and you might turn it off and turn it back on again. And now I've kind of held it for as long as I think is relevant, but I might have still pushed it too far. So what I'm going to do is hit Control R, and that's going to trigger a render. So as soon as Cinema has any kind of calculation time, it's going to be like, oh, I'm supposed to render. And that automatically pauses things like it automatically pauses the timeline. So it would pause everything. But I guess the problem is that one dynamic object is, while this is a lot of polygons, it shouldn't take that long for it to calculate a single frame. But the problem is that it is existing in the exact same spot as another dynamic object. So every single one of those was intersecting another one, and there it just finally finished the calculation. So everything I said still stands there, but it took that long because every polygon was colliding with another polygon and it was causing explosion. By deleting that, and I'm just gonna hit reinitialize again, probably don't have to. I'm gonna hit 1 frame forward just in case, and that seems fine. So now we hit play, and hey, yeah, forgot the dynamics tag. So yeah, and let's see if this theory is kind of holding true. I've got the higher poly count, and does it feel better on the crumples? The lighting here feels a little bit weird. I did turn off that light, but some of this could just be like SSAO calculating. Maybe, maybe not. I guess it depends on how it renders. You know, it's kind of rendering in a kind of harsh way. I mean, it's kind of neat for the buckling, but it's not a... I'm not sure what to make of it. I mean, because it's deforming based on the shape that it's around. So I guess that's not wrong. I just was hoping that would be a way of getting some sharper edges, but maybe it's not. I wonder if deforming this kind of shape would be good too if it had like more random angles in the polygons and whatnot. In any case, I think we're going to wrap this one up. So if anybody has questions, feel free to post them in again. And I guess just for fun, it's not like we baked that. I'll turn that off for a moment. Look at the original shape. And I just want to try... What I'd love to do is triangulate it, but you can't randomly triangulate it. I'd have to randomly select a bunch of polygons, and there's no built-in way in Cinema. I know there's like a plugin or two that does it, but there's no built-in way to randomly grab certain polygons. So I'm going to... I should probably turn off select only visible. So I'm going to randomly select a bunch, deselect a bunch, select a bunch, deselect a bunch, and then triangulate them. Mesh tool. Where does triangulate hide? I think it'd be under here. There it is. It's under cut. Triangulate. Now I'm going to hit UI to invert, and we want to move up point order. Can we do that here? Change point order. I don't know if that did anything. I just wanted it to triangulate nicely. So back to mesh, cut, triangulate. Hey, it did work. So you see everything I had selected rotated one way, and everything that I inverted rotated the other way. So now we get this new kind of triangulated mesh. I'm just curious of... That does dramatically change the properties of the way these things break, but I was just wondering if it might give nicer angles on the way it's crunching down. Well, we gotta reinitialize. Initialize. Neat pattern though. Yeah, it's a little more, I don't know. It's something. It's something. Doo-doo-doo. I mean, the basic crumples we were getting is nice, but how far we can push that, I'm not certain. Let's say. Yeah, crumple the heck out of that cylinder. N-gons are dangerous, Atish. Yeah, N-gons are, when it comes to dynamics, yeah, you're saying maybe use N-gons. I'm not sure at what point you're referring to because I was probably back a few minutes. But the problem with N-gons is they're still... N-gons behave differently for certain purposes, for like modeling purposes. But when it comes to running dynamics, it is not... N-gons do not help you. So if I were to set this to be 10 by 10 by 10, and then I untriangulate, so right click and say untriangulate, create N-gons, then now you see that we've gone and we've created all these N-gons, which means, you know, it's very simple to be like, oh, just select one polygon. It's not one polygon, it's one N-gon. But you can even see right now, because I have display N-gon lines, you can see what it's actually seeing. So I think the dynamic system wouldn't see one polygon. It would see that as a poly, that as a poly, that as a poly, that as a poly. And so you've completely changed the way that that lays out. I think we might be able to show that if we go into dynamics, and then how do we see that? I can't remember. There's a way of visualization, enable. Collision shaped boxes, contact points. How do we actually... see those, though. It doesn't seem to be displaying. Maybe this has to be there. Yeah, I'm not seeing it apply. I don't know. So, but if you have Control D, you can turn on visualization of dynamics and see these. It's just not seeming to show it. I might have some viewport option off that is stopping it from showing. I don't think I do, but that would be something. But my assumption here is that it's going to be viewing these this way. I'm not entirely sure. Let's just run the dynamics on here and see what it does. Yeah, very well. Right there is seeming. Oh, now it's seeing collisions. Bark. So it's just showing something once we hit play. Oh, actually, Apple was just saying, yeah, go one frame to see the visual, so it has to build it up, I guess. But just so I can, understand this, let's drop all of these down to very weak. Yeah, look at the way this bent, and it looks like the way it's bending exactly the way I described it was. So you cannot trust an N-gon. Never trust an N-gon. No, N-gons are great. I remember before we had them, it was a dark time. Seems like I can't see them now that we are. Oh, well, if I just click on it, you can see. So yeah, see that bent, and then that bent, and that bent, and that bent. But then this one can't bend internally because there's a lot of structure there. So it's interesting, but we definitely don't want that. So there, cool. We confirmed a theory I had. Lots of people chatting back and forth, which is great. Trey had a question. How would you achieve this butter smooth cutting effect? Butter smooth. What are we going to see here? Oh, I think we might have answered this question last year. It's playing audio. I got a copyright strike because one of these was playing audio, and I don't know how to mute site. There we go. Yeah, we did literally this with noodles. Not literally this one, but this exact effect in a different Rocket Lasso Live. This is from Wannerstedt. Multi-slice sound design from @Cypher Audio. @Cypher Audio. Blink, blink, blink. Yeah, I mean, this even kind of looks like the one we based off of. I don't see, the way we did it was the only way I can think of. And the way we did it was very nice. So I guess maybe we'll just track down that episode. Should be pretty easy. Give me a moment. And I'm off on the other screen for a moment. Let me see if I can find the episode, and then I can just link it. So inside of, I tried making all the thumbnails be more clear, but let's see, what do I got to do here? Go to my channel, and then go to playlists, and then go to Rocket Lasso Live Season 1. That's, oh, interesting. Maybe, oh, there it is. I found it. That was in the episode called Rapid Fire. So here's a link. Bing. And then here, I can pull it up. Bing. So let's see. Yeah, so here's where we did it. So it's actually maybe the second one. So we based off this actual video of these noodles getting cut. So the exact same concept, as you can see. And then we create the entire thing. Make some noodles, and we make a noodle-shaped hole for the extrusion. And then we have it rotate. We used espresso, so it rotates the exact amount that it would need to travel through the hole. And then we use a dynamic object. And then I think do we emit? We might emit from a particle to create the new ones. And it might just be a cloner. But then we actually make it so that these parts fall off dynamically, and it just keeps on repeating. Oh yeah, I think we animated the count of a cloner. So the count of the cloner is popping up by 1 at the exact moment that this noodle would get to that point, and suddenly it goes back to the original position and does the exact same motion again and again. And right at the moment that it disappears, the new one gets emitted effectively by a cloner animating up the count by 1. So a new clone gets created at 0, 0, 0. And you get infinite noodles. So I linked it in the chat, and there it is right here. So I've tackled that one. I think we did it quite well. Back to the chat. Low tech. What you got? Another Instagram link. I'm gonna mute it. Oh, it's the site is muted, which is excellent. That's what I want. From Luca Vogier. Lucas Vogier. The self is multi-layered. Sigmund Freud. Hey, look at that. Blurp, 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 blurp. That's both cute and gross. Ew. That's real nasty at the end. First of all, I thought I saw the word Houdini. Octane. Side of, oh yeah, Houdini, freaking first word. The part that's throwing me off a little bit is this material, the way it's traveling through. How did they project the material on? Is it... You can see the entire face is there, but it's stretched out at different points. Well, not only that, there's quite a few layers of this. I was thinking that the material was the important part, but the more important part is this is the shape of a not overly detailed head. You see, there's not much detail here, but it is kind of in the shape of a head. But then it's also folded in over itself. So that's, ooh boy. I can't think of any way of doing it parametrically, but you could. How manually would you want to make this? Yeah, you'd have to do it very manually from what I'm thinking. Do we have any? I think I don't have all of the preset models. Yeah, I didn't download the preset models. I've got them in R20, but not over here. Well, we don't need to be ahead. I mean, for our purposes, like, it's going to be as difficult on a sphere as it is anything. So here's what we're going to do. And we're even going to make it a little easier on ourselves by, it's the more round your shape is, the more complicated it's going to be. To a degree, I'm going to give ourselves the halfway point by making a rounded cube. So if we did something like that, and then we were silly last time with the way we did our cuts, so we're going to do the cuts better this time. And I'm going to use a fracture object, a Voronoi fracture, throw this in. Our sources are going to be not based on the points. Last time we talked about this a lot, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about it, but I'm going to make a line of matrix objects. You see there's a whole bunch of them here. Set this to whatever number. And let me make sure the screen is proper. Yeah, there's a bunch of cuts here. I want them to be, as many as we, oh, this is not per step. That explains it. I was like, I keep cranking up, but there's no more. All right, so we do something like that. Now you see there's more and more and more and more cuts. So that becomes the source. And now we're going to get a bunch of horizontal cuts in here. And since we got a bunch of horizontal cuts, how is there a way? I don't think there's a way of only seeing the cuts. It'd be really cool if there was. Because there's hull and there's hollow, but, and then there's going to be 2 per. So I guess if we want to add a little bit of thickness in, how much is endpoint? Let's say per step. So there's this much space between them. So I'm going to type that in, and that should make it disappear. But if I cut that number in half, then, oh, that worked shockingly well. Okay, so doing something like that. Now we got a bunch of really thin sheets. So I'm going to try making that editable. Now we got all these different sheets. We got all this extra information. I don't need any of that. Delete all that. And actually, I'm going to grab all these and connect and delete. Now, in polygon mode, we need to select, are those n-gons? Yes. Okay. So this is about as good as we could have hoped. I'm going to select each one of these layers relatively carefully. Layer, 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 und layer. And I carefully did that because if I invert my selection, then we actually have a second polygon on the bottom and all the edges. So by deleting that, now I have a bunch of thin sheets. So in order to make what we did there, and like I said, we were making it a little bit easier on ourselves. Select all these. No, this is the correct orientation, but it is getting colorized by the original shape, which is throwing me off a little bit. And let's get some separation by turning on SSAO. So by selecting this, we need to start building, and here's what I was saying. If you had a spherical shape, you'd have to do this, but a little bit more manually. But I'm going to grab the bridge tool, and you would bridge from that polygon to that polygon. And we'd bridge from this polygon to that polygon. So what you'll see me do here, can I do all of them? No, you can't. I have to do it via edges. Was it edge B? Yeah, but can I do more than one? Bridge that to there. Okay, cool. I could grab all of them. So grabbing every other one, I am now bridging. Now you can imagine if you had a whole bunch of those all selected, you'd have to be bridging in a more complex way. You would have to be bridging not this single polygon, but you'd have to be bridging every, you know, if there's like 5 polygons here, you have to bridge them to the 5 polygons there. But if there's 5 polygons here and there's 7 here, you have to decide how those are combining. So this is the very simplified version of it. Now, these are still n-gons, so I can grab all these, and we need to do the opposite, which means we start here. Bridge, missed, bridge, bridge. So you saw how I cut the shape up, but this could have been the shape of a head or anything. And all of these are getting combined. And I'm not even going around the corner at all. So these are all super duper flat. But these are all now combined. It's just alternating. We get this nice zigzaggy pattern. So I don't know how well this will work because they're n-gons. We were just talking about how dangerous n-gons are on dynamics, but well, I guess we kind of made it difficult on ourselves by doing that, this big n-gon. I'm trying to think if there's for the purposes of displaying this, I don't think we need to do this rounded one. It's nice that we did, but it's not important. So because these are n-gons, I think I can delete all of those like that. Actually, I guess we'd even want these. So we want to get rid of all those. So I think I'm safe to just hit delete there. Yeah, and then those will become straight. So we're going to do that just to clean this up and see if we can push the concept a little bit further. So I'm going to delete these and these and hit delete. And now we should be left over with just this final accordion shape. Looks like I accidentally grabbed one little point I shouldn't have. We got to be very careful with the angle in which I deselect that. Nope, I made it worse. Shrink and turn back on select only. Shrink. Ball weighted. Okay. One more. There we go. Okay, nice. So with all of that in mind, now we get this zigzag pattern. And I mean, if anybody could think of a way of getting that alternating back and forth in a more parametric dynamic-y way, I'd love to hear it. Nothing is jumping to mind for me. But let's just see if the soft bodies can handle this shape now. Give this a quick save because it is a very strange dynamic setup I've never done. Unfolding accordion shape. Now, I mean, we could have made this shape easily, like with a spline or something. But the point being is that we were making a shape of a cutout, a series of cutouts. So Anyway, this is going to become a soft body. And I'm going to leave all the things default. If we were to hit play, actually just for fun, what happens if we drop this? I want the shadow from our crumple zone. Copy. Paste. Oh, turn on shadow. Bring. Okay, so yeah, it's so much better. So let's make the floor dynamic, and this is super low poly. So boing, yeah, these will fall in. Yeah, it's going to do its thing. They're able to twist and bend and whatnot, but then depending on the settings we put in there, we can stop that from happening. But that's working just fine there. Now we have to move it up, and the only way to do that is with a spring. So there's a point right there, which for some reason is giving me trouble selecting it, but whatever. We can create a simulation dynamic spring, and I'm going to move the spring, the object, by hitting snap. I've turned on snapping, and I can snap. Maybe I said snap. It is on snapping at P. Let's see. It's on vertex snap. Oh, it's apparent right now. That probably would stop it there. So we got one there, and I'm going to say it should select object B, and it should select to a particular. I could make a point selection, but I kind of like just making a polygon point. And if I offset the point index, you can see it's going to go at all the different points. But I have a guess that if we just go negative, maybe not. Okay, this is working less well than with the cloth because of the nature of the points. But here's another trick. I almost never show this, but if we select our object, I can select just that point. And actually, let's select both, because why not? I got both these points. If we can actually click on structure, and now you can see there's actually 0.4 and 0.5. So those are the 2 points we want. So this is either 4 or 5. 4? It's not 4. It is 5 there. And now it disappears, and it disappears because it's 0 length. So it is there. And you know what? Let's just create a second one. We will snap it. It's still on snap, so I will E for move and snap it there. And this one needs to be on 0.4. So we got 2 different springs. Each of them is snapping to that point. I'm going to click set rest length, and it'll set both to 0, 0, because that's exactly where they're at. And hit save again. Looks like I wasn't on frame 0 when I was just doing all that. So I'm just going to move it up a little bit and say set, and there's a little bit of a length to them. That's fine. Now if I hit play, yeah, you see those 2 are now connected. Now there's something called the region of influence, which influences multiple points as it goes down. And you see it almost feels like these are being influenced somehow. I've never understood what region of influence means exactly. I'm curious if we put that down to 0, if it'll, I guess, only 1. If it's literally, no, let's see, that super confused it. Yeah, region of influence is weird. Yeah, it's better if we do that. But in any case, a few extra frames here, 999. And this is so few polygons that I feel relatively confident being able to just drag these upward. And there you go. You get your unfolding. Ding, 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 ding. Whee! Yeah, it's even interactive, which is kind of fun. Oh, and I had snapping on, which is why I was jumping all over the place. Whee! Yeah, neat. So that does work. It just goes into, we didn't have any way of saying the selection of points should automatically jump to the other selection of points. Yeah, working surprisingly well. And then just for the sake of it, yeah, why not? I'm going to grab both these, hit Alt-G to put them into a group. We will keyframe them to kind of do a thing, because I'd like to see if we can maintain a little bit of that stiffness. So I'm going to keyframe Y, 200 frames forward, and I don't know how far we need to go, but something like that will be plenty for our purposes. So let's see what that gives us. These will move up. Hip, hip. Yep, so it's working just fine. So this might change the point placement count thing, but what I would like to do is select all of these edges. So I'm going to turn this off and go bloop. And now I've selected, oh, Well, it should have selected every single edge. I turned off visible. This has selected every edge on one side and the other. So if I hit MF, I can hit cut, and now you see there's a slice right down the middle. I'm actually going to cut twice. So now you see there's 3 polygons across. Just a little bit more room to bend. So this will run a little bit slower, but still probably pretty quick. It looks like our springs are not quite in the same spot. Could take a minute to find them. So we're being clean and meticulous. So let's just click on structure and see what we move to. It still says they're 4 and 5. That's weird. It says it's 4 and 5, but the springs don't seem to be. Oh wait, our spring position moved. That's weird. I'm gonna turn on snapping again. Snap. Turn on snapping. Wait, they both want to be there now? 4. Yeah, okay. And 5. 5 and 4. Sorry about that. All right, so their Y position is still keyframed, but now they should be in the proper spot. I just have to set their rest length back. Their rest lengths are now 0. I'm gonna save this as B. Sometimes I hit this. I just hit the save shortcut 3 times. The first time maybe I misclicked. The second time I didn't. The third time it just worked. Go figure. I think maybe it's a keyboard. Okay, clean, nice and clean here. And now you can see there's a little bit of bend in them. So, but you'll see as that, actually, I'm a little surprised. You see this, there's a lot of stiffness to that. It's kind of what I want, but surprised we're getting it already. Structure, lots of structure. Damping, sure, lots of damping. Shear, no shear. I want, you know, tons of, well, lots of, I don't want it to happen, so I'm going to put lots of it in. And then flexion is the actual one that should be creating that bend. So I just want to make sure everything else is working. Oh yeah, damping. I talk about this in the, I learned so many things during the making of that, the dropping cloth, because you see how, watch, everything is going to start moving up into the air. Everything. And that's happening because of damping. Damping causes that. If I get rid of damping and damping and damping and do the same thing, you're going to see, oh, it's going to freaking flip out. Maybe we'll leave some. No, doesn't like it. I'm gonna increase our steps, 3 times as many steps. See if it freaks. Okay, it didn't. Whoa, little hop there for some reason. But now that the damping is gone, you see that they're not all flying into the air. They're doing a little dance. Yeah, I'm not sure about that, but it's sort of working. I mean, there's a nice amount of stiffness here too. And so more flexion would try and maintain their shape more, but look how stiff that still is. I think if I put 0, yeah, see 0 flexion will turn this into like a perfect ribbon. These just will completely fold over, and these are completely allowed to level out. I do not understand that little explosion there, but it's fun. So yeah, a little flexion is going a surprisingly long way. So if we jump this back up to some a little bit higher, 55, then now those are maintaining their shape a lot. There's a lot of weight on those, so I guess that just does maintain it. How far can we push the flexion? Really want those to stop hopping. Tell you the truth, I can't really think of what would cause those to stop hopping. We could, I guess, actually, I do have an idea. We can do some aerodynamics. Aerodynamics are a great way of draining energy out from the system that doesn't cause, they're still doing a little hopping, but it's mitigating it a lot. Aerodynamics is a great way of draining energy out from the system without causing the whole system to move in the air. Now, what was I trying to do? Well, we still have some flexion damping here. That drains the energy out from those. But I wanted very heavy flexion so that what I'd love to have happen is these two accordion a little bit before it kind of gets to them. Right now, they're not moving until they're forced to. But we're already at like the heavy. I mean, this number is already cartoonishly large. And if it's not having any effect, then I don't think we can have an effect. Yeah, this doesn't want to pull until it gets there. And I just kind of wanted a little bit more of a slinky effect where like, it, you know, the next one is affected a little bit less, but it is affected. Sulk, you might be right. Changing the dynamic scale might help here. And also the collision margin might have something to do. First, I'm going to try getting rid of the collision margin. That can make everything a lot more detailed and accurate. And their hopping does kind of feel like less. And then you're saying change the scale. We got our time scale, our expert, I guess this overall scale here. So I'm going to try making it 10 times the size. So that's bigger and there's more hopping. So let's try going 1/10 the size. Super slur. I mean, changing that scale is not super great because if it's making everything move at 1/10 the speed because it thinks it's way smaller, that's not exactly what I want either. But regardless, let's see. I mean, you can see a little bit. You see as this is pulling up, this one's getting pulled, and then that one is pulled a little bit. But it's not until it's almost there. I just wish we could get it to go a little bit more. Just a little. But I don't think there's any way to do that. Not with the built-in settings. I mean, flexion is literally the setting, and if that doesn't want to do it, then I don't think anything will. And you know, we can add a little bit of stiffness, but of course that's just, it's going to make the entire shape. Yeah, the entire shape is going to want to go up with it, so you can't do that. Maybe a little stiffness with no damping, just to check. Yeah, still not. Didn't think so, but always worth a try. Yeah, can't think of. I mean, everything else is very manual, and that's not what I would want to do. Like, it would be things like linking a spring from here to here, and from here to here, and from here to here. That's not good. I think we're just pushing the dynamics to their limit in this particular case. Like, that's just asking a little too much of them. Can the flexion? No, that's claps out at 180 as well. Yeah. Let's see. Subdivide ones. Steps. So yeah, a bunch of random suggestions to perhaps vertex map on the sides. No, I mean, yeah, I mean, these are fine suggestions, everybody, but like a vertex map will do us no good because the vertex map only ever makes something weaker, not stronger. So we're already at maximum strength. We got full flexion here, like cartoonishly high numbers. I'll add more fives, but at a certain point, they just don't start doing much. So you see here that it's just not, it's not going to maintain that rotation. You can see here that it's just not pulling up. So a vertex map doesn't improve anything. There is bounce in the collisions, but bounce, Zach is asking if there's bounce in collisions, and there is, but I'd actually be kind of impressed if that had an effect on those hopping because I reset our scale back. Because when it comes to soft bodies, I always thought they absorbed all of the, yeah, those hops are still there, so bounce wasn't it. I mean, we are feeding this a very strange and peculiar shape, so I wouldn't be surprised if Cinema doesn't exactly know what to do with it. I wonder if there'd be a way of doing this with a spline. It would be a fake. It would be a way faker version. Like clearly, the other one we saw in Houdini was a full kind of real one. But we got a few more minutes. I wonder. Oh, and we don't even have to work too hard because we've already got our spline here. I'm going to do a loop selection here, and then deselect those, and then create a rectangle selection, and deselect these. And now I've got my perfect edge. Now I can hit Shift or Shift C, type in edge. There's edge to spline. This is now converted to a lovely little spline for us. I'm going to save it as a different scene file. Spline, because I don't want this one to interfere. So this is soft body. We need a spring still. So turn on snapping. This should still. Yeah, cool. It's still snapped. And that is going to connect to the spline. And this is 0.0 or 0.1. Yeah, 0.0, excellent. Set rest length. It is 0. It should still animate its way upward. It should. Let's get, it's got this region of influence connected to a spline, 0.1. So this is now a spline. It is set to soft body. We got a bunch of crazy settings. I'm going to go back. Let's do the stiffness. That's fine. Let's see. This. The spring. What are you doing, spring? What are you doing? I'm going to make this a lot lighter. Spring, that does have an effect on springs. Custom density 0.1. See if there's a visual difference. No. 0.001. Oop, 0.001. Play. Still nothing. Come on, spring. I don't know. Like there could just be something weird with it. I'm just going to delete that spring and create another one. When you get that kind of weirdness, who knows what kind of setting I might have turned on or messed with. Rewind. Still on snapping. Snap to that point. Spring is connected to spline 0.0. Set rest length. Play. I'm going to put a new simulation soft body. It's all back to defaults now. Still doesn't like it. Put all of our settings back to defaults. Spring, why are you not doing your thing? This is really basic setup. I don't understand what I'm messing up. I could be messing something up obvious. Copy, new, paste. I mean, it's not even the new scene file, new dynamics, new spring, polygon point, region of influence. Crank up the dynamic settings. Expert 55. We'll go nuts. It's not doing it. The spring itself is the object if empty. Yeah, you're answering someone else's question, but yeah, this is connected to itself because it's empty. I'll try putting it into the 0.1 and clearing off the other one, but I don't think that it would be the case. Point back, point forward, point back. Set rest length. Play. Still not working. Yeah, polygon point. I'm on polygon point. And yeah, you can see this connected very directly. So 0.0 is 0.0. We do this all the time. Linear. There's not much strange here. Yeah, I mean, yeah, we can use a completely different dynamic system, but why is this one not working? It should be working, and something about the way we're doing it, or I don't know, maybe my computer needs a restart or something. But it's, and it's entirely possible I'm just messing up a setting here. This seems incredibly straightforward, though. But hey, for the sake of just wrapping it up, let's go ahead and do that. I'll add instead of soft body, we'll use a hair spline dynamics tag. What's nice about this is it's trivial to set a fixed point here. So set that, and now that's a fixed point, and now gravity will take over and these will all fall. And I guess this will do a fine job of, we can see how the stiffness is working. It's unraveling nicely. But the thing I had wanted to do doesn't seem to be working here either, but I'm gonna add a lot more stiffness. There's a lot less settings. 0 rubberiness. Oh, that seems to freak it out a lot. Let's go back to the beginning. Yeah, what I want, yeah, you see, that's starting to react in a very interesting way. I guess that's pulling that, which is pulling that, which is then forcing those that way. Not exactly what it's going for. Those are kind of exploding now. Eee, what is that? Is it from heavy stiffness? Or is that from lack of rubber? I guess it needs some rubber? I thought rubber made it. Oh, maybe I was treating rubber the opposite. Maybe rubber needs to be 100 and not 0. I don't use... spline dynamics are great for what they do, but you quickly hit the limitation, so I almost never use them. Yeah, and then one of the frustrations is you can't go above 100, so it's like, oh, stiffness of 100, but like clearly that's not that stiff, and it doesn't let me push the number beyond that. So I mean, this is doing a fine job, but it's not able to do what I wanted it to do. Even here, like I'd like to see more of these sheets getting peeled up, and it's hard to tell if this is doing it at all. Like there, it wasn't. There, it really wasn't. Yeah, those don't seem to be reacting too much, but you know, it's a neat effect. But yeah, for some reason, the spline dynamics should have done this with the spring easily, and it just was not. That'd be a curious question if we put a lot of drag, so these are falling a lot more slowly. But yeah, you even here you can see that's not. They're not affected until this one's kind of complete. And I would think, I don't know, I guess it's just how many times it's iterating down the chain. Yeah. At a certain point, I just feel like there's the settings we would need to tweak and change to make it do what we want just simply do not exist. So we push that as far as we currently can in Cinema. You know, it's even like, you know, maybe X Particles has some cool simulation. Maybe their dynamic stuff could handle this in a slightly different way. Maybe not. There's also third-party dynamics. There's the old Silver Bullet. This is based off of the Bullet dynamics. The Cinema one is based off Bullet dynamics. I'm not sure what they changed in their implementation, but before Cinema, there was also the Silver Bullet implementation via plugin, which was neat. Yeah, that wasn't working. I'm just going to replace it. Let's see. Yeah, thanks for all the suggestions, everybody. But yeah, sadly, none of those were working. Tom, what do you got? Short question. Is the ending of your earlier stream about making scales uploaded anywhere? The YouTube cuts off in the middle. Really? You know what? I'll give a little sneak peek here. I'm planning on making a full tutorial on the scales. And nobody else go and make a tutorial about scales. But besides that, I'll give you a quick preview here. I got to find the file. Give me a moment. I actually contacted some people at Maxon about like how I could do something, and essentially it turned into like, no, you can't do that. It was like, oh, that's a good idea. Maybe we can implement it, but it wasn't going to currently work. Oh, I forgot that I'd never. Yeah, I didn't save it into a tutorial folder because I haven't started the tutorial. But anyway, the point being is I found a really good way of getting what I wanted to. And this is my next planned tutorial to record. I just got to figure out exactly what it'll be. Man, it was hard to get that cloth one out. But what I did is just by drawing these splines, like all I have to do is draw a new spline and it completely adapts the direction of the scales. And there has to be a little pre-baking, but this should just work. If I hit play, then all of these, based on the field flow, are getting to their proper orientation. And then at frame 30, I think, if I remember correctly, frame 30, suddenly all the scales exist and they're being affected by that same wind. And that same wind blows them into their proper orientation. And the flow of these is completely determined by the flow of these splines, which is what I was trying to do. So all these splines are saying start at the bottom and flow towards the top. And you'll see at the top, that's where we get our fun little pinch area. But everything else is following the spline. And over here, following the spline. So just as to show kind of all the way through, if I delete all of those splines, let's go to a side view. I'm going to rewind just to turn off that cloner. If I were to, I guess I'm going to draw one here and then we'll just curve up to here. So that's all we're doing. So drop that into this connect, which will automatically feed it in the proper spots in the setup. I can hit escape. It's interesting. I don't know if that, can drawing a spline survive changing the POV? That's interesting if so. But anyway, now there's a single spline you saw I was traveling up through just by dropping into this connect. And when this tutorial's done, you'll see that. When I hit play, there's almost like these tiny little windmill or like weather vanes, and they all figure out the proper orientation to go. And once they've figured out their orientation 30 frames in, suddenly all the scales get created based on that orientation. And now they're all going to blow in the wind. Now it looks like it was actually not, the direction of the spline was not from here to here, but from here to here. But you'll now see that just by changing that spline, all of these scales have the proper orientation. And you see they all have their curve properly outward, but you'll now see that they're all flowing to face that way. And over here, like they're facing the closest possible direction they can to there. So just by drawing new splines, you get a completely new flow of where the scales go. So yes, I don't know why the recording cuts out. I have to check that one. In fact, I'm going to make a note right now to myself to check that. Scales recording cuts out. I might need to re-upload that if that's the case. But I am planning on making a full tutorial, and the new one is so much better than what we had figured out before. So that is something to look forward to. And by the way, for everybody who's here asking questions, thank you very much. But I also have a bonus stream for Patreon, people who support on Patreon. And during the bonus stream is where I kind of spend time. It's kind of like this, but I'm spending more time on the things I'm particularly interested in, or if something really cool, what we've been doing most of the time this year for this season is if the coolest question that we had during this stream, I'll try and explore it. Or it's like, oh, there's more possibilities there, but I need more time. So it's like 2 hours of just exploring something. So we've actually spent 2 different days just playing with these scales. And last time I was like almost ready to give up. And I was like, wait, I got one last idea. And then it finally worked here. So yeah, if you support on Patreon, then you get access to these bonus streams where I figure out all these details. But like I just said, ultimately, this is going to end up as a proper recorded tutorial and everybody will get the final result for free. So that's always my goal, is to have everything be nice and open. That should wrap up model an artichoke. I mean, that kind of yeah, an artichoke or a pine cone, or a lot of those different things are opening up the possibilities there. In fact, that's even another note I should write to myself. Like, so it's like, okay, dragon scales, but if it does turn into another multi-part, it could be like, oh, also make a pine cone, or a artichoke, or other, like, oh, here's maybe a practical application. Because, you know, it's not unusual to get a question about that kind of thing. And I mean, I think the same thing could apply to a certain degree on like bird feathers and whatnot. But yeah, I'm quite pleased with the ability to do this kind of thing. So a little more exploration on that. And then, you know, there's a good chance it'll be the next tutorial. Anyway, thank you so much, everybody, especially a big, let me pop up here. Yeah, a big thanks, everybody, especially the people supporting on Patreon. It makes it a lot easier to be able to do these kind of streams and enable trying to explore these things even further, and then try and make them into tutorials. So I super duper appreciate that. If you're not already on the Rocket Lasso Slack channel, that is where the conversation continues. Everybody who's hanging out in chat, almost everybody's already on the Slack channel. So go ahead to rocketlassoslack.com and you'll be able to get an invitation into the Slack channel. So that's really fun. And I'll see everybody tomorrow for the bonus stream. Watch out tomorrow for the part 3 of the cloth wrinkles tutorial, and that should wrap up this one. So thank you so much, everybody, and I'll see you tomorrow or next week. Bye bye. Stay healthy. Bye bye.